The sound of his brand-new Porsche Cayenne roaring into our driveway shattered the quiet Tuesday afternoon in our Palo Alto neighborhood. I was in the kitchen, finishing up the last of the dinner prep: baked chicken, steamed broccoli, and brown rice. Simple, healthy, affordable on my budget. I heard the car door slam, then the heavy footsteps I'd known for 23 years. But these footsteps were different now. Heavier, more confident, almost aggressive. "Maya!" Richard's voice boomed through the house before he even reached the kitchen. "Maya, where are you?" I wiped my hands on my apron and turned to face him. He stood in the doorway, his 6-foot frame filling the space, his face flushed with excitement. His suit, a new one I didn't recognize, probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget, was perfectly tailored. His hair, graying at the temples, was slicked back in that style his younger colleagues wore. "I'm right here," I said calmly. "How was your day?" He didn't answer. Instead, he strode past me to the wine rack, pulled out a bottle of Cabernet, a nice one we'd been saving for a special occasion, and uncorked it without ceremony. "Richard, we're celebrating." He cut me off, pouring himself a generous glass. He didn't pour one for me. "Guess what happened today?" I set down the wooden spoon I'd been holding. "What happened?" He took a long sip of wine, savoring it, savoring the moment. "They made me VP of Acquisitions. Vice President Maya. Do you know what that means?" I felt my heart sink, though I kept my face neutral. I knew what it meant. It meant longer hours, more stress, more of him not being home. But I also knew it meant more money, and maybe, just maybe, we could finally start planning for retirement, help our daughter Emma with her medical school loans, get the roof fixed. "Congratulations," I said, managing a smile. "That's wonderful news. I'm so proud of you." He drained half the glass and set it down on the counter with a sharp click. My salary just went from $200,000 to $450,000, plus bonuses, plus stock options. The number hung in the air between us. $450,000. After all these years of scraping by, of me clipping coupons and buying store brands, of putting off vacations and driving our 10-year-old Honda, finally, we'd have some breathing room. That's amazing, Richard. We can finally... No, the word stopped me cold. "What?" He poured himself more wine, his back to me now. When he turned around, his expression was different, harder, almost like he was looking at a stranger. "I've been thinking about this for a while, Maya. Our arrangement. It's not fair." I blinked, confused. "What arrangement?" "You chose to stay home when Emma was born. That was your choice. I never asked you to quit your job." The words hit me like a slap. I had quit my job as an accountant at Morrison & Associates when Emma was born. Not because Richard asked me to, but because his career was demanding, and someone needed to be there for our daughter. Someone needed to drive her to soccer practice and help with homework and sit with her when she was sick. That someone had been me for the last 18 years. "Richard, we decided together." "You decided," he interrupted. "And now, all these years later, I'm still carrying the financial burden alone. It's not fair to me." My hands started to tremble. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. "So here's what's going to happen," he continued, his tone businesslike, as if he were presenting a proposal to his board. "From now on, we split expenses 50-50. You pay half the mortgage, half the utilities, half the groceries, half of everything. I pay for my life. You figure out yours. The extra money from this promotion, that's my reward for my hard work. Not ours, mine." The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too hot. I couldn't breathe. "Richard, I don't have a job. I haven't worked in 18 years. How am I supposed to?" "That's not my problem." He picked up his wine glass and walked toward the door. "You made your choices, Maya. Now I'm making mine. Oh, and one more thing, I'm moving into the guest room. I need quality sleep for my new position. Your snoring has been keeping me up." I didn't snore. We both knew that. He paused at the doorway and looked back at me. "We can still be married, obviously. But financially, we're separate now. Fair is fair." Then he was gone, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen with a baked chicken that nobody would eat together. That night, lying alone in our king-size bed, I stared at the ceiling and did something I hadn't done in years. I cried, not loudly, not dramatically. Just quiet tears that soaked into my pillow as I processed what had just happened. 23 years. We'd been married for 23 years. I'd given up my career, my independence, my identity as anything other than Richard's wife and Emma's mother. And now he was telling me it didn't matter, that it was my problem. But as the tears dried and the night grew darker, something else started to grow inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder, more calculated. I got out of bed, went to my laptop, and opened a file I hadn't touched in years. My old resume, my old contacts, my old life as an accountant who was actually pretty damn good at her job. And then I started making a list. By the time the sun rose, I had a plan. Not a detailed one yet, but the bones of it. And for the first time in 23 years, I felt something I hadn't felt since before I was married. I felt powerful. The next morning, Richard left for work early. He didn't say goodbye. I heard him in the kitchen, making his espresso with the machine he'd bought himself for his birthday, and then he was gone. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, regular drip, not espresso, and called the first number on my list. Morrison and Associates. How may I direct your call? Hi, this is Maya Chen. I used to work there. Is David Morrison available? David had been my mentor before I left. We'd stayed in touch sporadically over the years, Christmas cards, the occasional email, but I hadn't spoken to him in at least 5 years. Maya! His voice boomed through the phone. What a surprise! How are you? I'm well, David. Listen, do you have time for coffee this week? I'd like to talk to you about something. We met at a Starbucks near his office. David looked older, grayer, more lines around his eyes, but his handshake was still firm, his smile still genuine. So, he said, after we'd exchanged pleasantries and caught up on our families, what's this about? I took a breath. I need advice. Financial advice. Legal advice. And I need it to be completely confidential. His expression shifted from friendly to professional. Go on. I told him everything. The promotion, the new arrangement, the separate finances, the guest room. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and shook his head. Maya, I'm not a divorce attorney, but I know several good ones. What he's doing, it's called financial abuse. And in California, it's not legal. You're entitled to... I'm not ready to divorce him yet, I interrupted. Not yet. Right now, I just need to understand my options, and I need to get back on my feet financially. He studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, let's start there. Do you want to come back to work? The question caught me off guard. I don't know if I can. It's been 18 years, David. The field has changed so much. You were one of the best forensic accountants I ever had, Maya. That skill doesn't disappear. Tell you what, we have a part-time consulting position open. Flexible hours. You'd be reviewing financial documents, looking for discrepancies. It's perfect for someone getting back into the field. Interested? I felt something bloom in my chest. Hope, maybe, or determination. Yes, I said. Yes, I am. The first month was hell. Not because of the work that came back to me easier than I expected, like muscle memory, but because of Richard. He noticed immediately when I started going out during the day. The first time he came home and I wasn't there, I came back to find him in the kitchen, angry. Where were you? I got a job, I said simply. His face went through several emotions, surprise, anger, and then something that might have been respect or fear. Good, he said finally. Now you can pay your half. And I did. Sort of. I paid exactly what he asked for. My half of the utilities, my portion of groceries, my share of the property tax. But I was careful. I kept receipts. I documented everything. Because while I was learning to be an accountant again during the day, I was being something else at night. I was being a forensic accountant investigating my own husband. It started small. A credit card statement left on his desk that I photographed. Bank statements in the recycling that I retrieved. His computer password, our daughter's birth date. Predictably, that gave me access to his email. What I found made my blood run cold. Richard wasn't just living separately from me emotionally and financially, he was living an entirely separate life. There were charges at restaurants I'd never heard of, hotel rooms, expensive gifts purchased from Tiffany's, flight bookings for 2 to Vegas, Miami, Cabo. And then I found the emails. Her name was Sienna. She was 27 years old and worked in Richard's department. The emails started innocent, enough work discussions, meeting schedules. But then they changed, became flirtier, more explicit, more disturbing. In one email, Richard wrote, "Can't wait to take you to Napa this weekend. Don't worry, my wife thinks I'm at a conference. She's too busy playing house to notice anyway." I sat at my computer, reading that email over and over, feeling something break inside me and then immediately harden into something unbreakable. Playing house. That's what he thought I'd been doing for 23 years. Playing house while he built his career on the foundation of my sacrifice. I forwarded the email to a private account. Then I kept looking. Over the next 3 months, I built a file. Not just of the affair, though that was damning enough, but of something else I'd noticed. Financial irregularities in Richard's expense reports and reimbursements. See, the thing about being a forensic accountant is that you learn to spot patterns, and Richard's expense reports had a very concerning pattern. Personal charges being coded as business expenses, reimbursements for meals and hotels that were actually dates with Sienna. Even some creative accounting with his stock options that looked suspiciously like he was hiding assets. I brought my findings to David. He looked over the documents I'd compiled and let out a low whistle. "Maya, this is fraud. Corporate fraud. If his company finds out—" "They won't find out from me," I said quickly. "Not yet. I need this as insurance. Can you help me understand the implications?" He connected me with a lawyer friend of his, Karen Patel, who specialized in high-net-worth divorces. We met at her office, and I laid out everything I had. Karen reviewed the materials with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen it all before. When she looked up, she was smiling. "Mrs. Chen, your husband has made several critical mistakes. First, California is a community property state. Everything earned during your marriage is split 50-50, regardless of who earned it. His attempt to separate finances now means nothing legally." She flipped through more documents. "Second, his affair and financial abuse give you grounds for a very favorable divorce settlement. Third, and this is the interesting part, this corporate fraud could result in termination and possibly criminal charges. You've documented it beautifully." "I don't want to turn him in yet," I said. "I want him to do it to himself." Karen's smile widened. "I think I'm going to enjoy working with you." Christmas came and went. Richard spent it in Miami with Sienna. He told Emma he had to work. She was home from medical school for the holidays and was heartbroken that her father couldn't make time for her. "Mom, what's going on with you and Dad?" she asked me one night over hot chocolate. I thought about lying, protecting her. But Emma was 20 years old and smart as a whip. She deserved the truth. "Your father and I are going through some things," I said carefully. "But no matter what happens, we both love you. That hasn't changed." She looked at me with those eyes that were so much like mine. "He's having an affair, isn't he?" I didn't answer, but I didn't have to. "Mom, you don't have to put up with this. You know that, right?" I squeezed her hand. "I know, sweetheart. And I'm not. I promise you, I'm not." By February, Richard's behavior had escalated. He was rarely home. When he was either locked in his room or actively hostile. He'd started making comments about how I'd let myself go, how I was boring, how he deserved someone who could keep up with his lifestyle. One Saturday morning, he came into the kitchen where I was having breakfast. "I'm taking the Tesla today," he announced. "You can use the Honda." The Tesla had been purchased 3 months ago with what he called his money. I'd been driving our old Honda. I didn't argue. "That's fine," I said. He looked disappointed that I hadn't fought back. "Also, I'm taking the house next month." I looked up from my coffee. "Excuse me? I'm refinancing in my name only. Since I'm paying the mortgage now, it should be in my name. You can find an apartment or something. I'll give you 30 days. This was new. This was bold. This was also incredibly stupid. "Richard, you can't just—" "Watch me," he said, and walked out. I sat there for a long moment, then picked up my phone and called Karen. "He just what?" she said when I told her. "He's trying to refinance the house in his name only. He can't do that without your signature. You're on the deed." "I know. But Karen, I think it's time." There was a pause. "Are you sure? Once we start this, there's no going back." I thought about the last 6 months. The loneliness, the humiliation, the fear, but also the strength I'd found, the job I'd rebuilt, the evidence I'd gathered, the life I was planning. "I'm sure," I said. "Let's do it." The next week, I filed for divorce. Richard didn't take it well. He came home that evening after being served the papers at his office, his face purple with rage. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, waving the documents. I was sitting at the kitchen table, calm, a cup of tea in front of me. I'd been expecting this. "It's a divorce petition," I said evenly. "You can't divorce me. You have nothing." "No money, no job." "I have a job, Richard. I've had one for 6 months. And as for money, well, we'll let the lawyers sort that out." He slammed the papers on the table. "You're not getting a dime. You think you can just walk away with half of everything I've earned after you sat on your ass for 18 years? This was the moment I'd been preparing for. I stood up, walked to the counter, and picked up a folder. A thick folder. "You're right," I said. "Let's talk about what you've earned." I opened the folder and started laying out documents. Credit card statements, bank records, emails, expense reports. "Here's what you've earned. A corporate fraud investigation. See, Richard, when you code personal expenses as business expenses, that's called embezzlement. When you hide assets in preparation for a divorce, that's called fraud. And when you do both while having an affair with a subordinate, well, that's a trifecta of career-ending mistakes." His face went from purple to white. You've been spying on me?" "I've been documenting financial abuse," I corrected. "Which, by the way, is illegal in California, along with adultery affecting the divorce settlement." "Oh, and your attempt to refinance the house without my knowledge? That's attempted fraud, too." I pulled out one more document. "This is a letter ready to be sent to your company's HR department, the board of directors, and the SEC. It details every fraudulent expense, every hidden asset, every lie you've told. All I have to do is press send." He grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. "Maya, you can't." "I can. And I will. Unless." "Unless what?" I sat back down, picked up my tea, took a sip. "Unless you agree to my terms. Uncontested divorce. I get the house. I get half of all retirement accounts, investments, and assets. You pay Emma's remaining medical school tuition. And you resign from your position and find employment elsewhere. Effective immediately." That's insane. I can't just quit my job." "Actually, you can. Because if you don't, I send these documents, and you won't have a job to quit. You'll have a criminal record, and good luck finding VP positions with that on your resume." We stared at each other across the kitchen table. The same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where we'd helped Emma with her homework, where we'd planned our life together. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, and for the first time he sounded small. Defeated. "Because you asked me to split everything 50-50, Richard. So I am. You get 50% of the consequences of your actions. I'd say that's fair." He signed the papers 3 days later. The divorce was finalized in 4 months. Richard resigned from his position, citing personal reasons. The company never learned about the fraud. I kept that information to myself as insurance, in case he ever tried to reduce child support or renege on our agreement. Sienna, interestingly, was also let go. Apparently, when Richard was no longer in a position to protect her, HR took a closer look at her own expense reports. What they found wasn't criminal, but it was enough to warrant termination. Richard moved to Sacramento and took a job at a smaller firm at half his previous salary. He could afford it barely since I had the house and most of the assets. As for me, I kept working at Morrison & Associates. David promoted me to senior consultant after 6 months. The pay is good, not $450,000 good, but enough, more than enough. Emma graduated medical school last spring. I was there. Richard was supposed to come but canceled at the last minute. Emma didn't seem surprised. She and I have grown closer over these years. She tells me she's proud of me, that seeing me stand up for myself taught her that it's never too late to advocate for your own worth. Sometimes I drive past our old house, my house now. I've repainted the kitchen, changed the locks, made it mine. And sometimes, when I'm having coffee on the back deck on a quiet Sunday morning, I think about that day Richard came home with his promotion. How excited he was to tell me that his salary was his. How confident he was that I would just accept it. I think about the Maya I was then scared, lost, powerless. And then I think about the Maya I am now employed. Independent, free. Richard wanted to split everything 50-50. He wanted me to figure out my own life. So I did. I figured out that I didn't need him. That I was always stronger than he gave me credit for. That 23 years of sacrifice didn't make me weak, it made me patient. Patient enough to document every mistake, patient enough to build my case, patient enough to wait for exactly the right moment to strike. Last week, I ran into someone I used to know from the old neighborhood. She asked how I was doing, if I was lonely. I smiled and told her the truth. I've never been better. Because here's what I learned. When someone tells you they're going to take everything and leave you with nothing, believe them. But also believe in yourself. Believe that you have the power to turn their weapon into your shield. That you can take their greed and use it against them. That patience isn't weakness, it's strategy. Richard wanted to keep all the money he earned from his promotion, and in a way, he did. He kept exactly 50%, just like he asked for. The other 50%? That's mine now, along with the house, the retirement accounts, and something far more valuable, my self-respect. He wanted a 50-50 split. I gave him one, and I made sure he got exactly what he deserved.